You no longer have to shut up now.
Welcome to the Way of the Weeb podcast. I am a group admin and lawful neutral Zach Johnson.
I'm not. I am an admin, but I'm not lawful neutral, and I like to stick my nose in place where it doesn't belong. I go by PsychosD4 here on the internet, and we have a special guest with us today, which is unusual. It's usually just us two losers yammering at each other in incoherent fashion, but now we have someone who can add some fuel to the fire of incoherence. Welcome, our good friend, the emotional support peacock, Cooper.
To the Hi guys, how you doing? In terms of alignments, I don't subscribe to any of them because I don't like being limited. But no, I'd probably be chaotic good if we're being honest. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, that's acceptable. I mean, how's that working out for you anyway?
Good for the most part. I don't know. I just you guys started talking about the alignments and based on the name, and I was like, you know what? Might as well just come out swinging. Let's just say something mildly controversial. Why not?
Yeah, mildly controversial as opposed
me
to
labeling myself an lawful neutral was more of a spur of the moment kind of thing on the 0 episode.
Oh. Okay. Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So usually how we knock these off is that we talk about if we haven't cleared out the poll yet. We would just talk about some of the selections in our polls for the reading and viewing selections for the month in the group. But we've completed the polls. We've got our selections this time. One of them we've already talked about in a previous episode, so we're skipping that one. But what we do have instead is the first selection, which will be the family manga selection for the month. That is the actual Japanese title. If I can pull it up. No, that's not it.
The girl I like forgot her glasses.
I'm not reading that. But the English title is The Girl I Like Forgot Her Glasses. And that seems like a simple enough premise, doesn't it?
Yeah, that title basically encapsulates the purpose of the series, or at least the first chapter.
Really? I suppose you've already taken to consuming this particular piece of media, haven't you?
No, I have no idea what this is. I'm just speculating based on how straightforward the name is, that the narrative can't be super deep, I would imagine. But I mean, I could be wrong. Hey, I'm game for. Am I correct? Have you guys gone through this already? I would assume so if we're talking about it.
Negative.
Not yet. Although with like with the title such as that, like how deep can you get with a slice of life?
Well, actually,
I mean, you can get deep. I don't know if this one necessarily does. It looks like it's aiming at a fairly young demographic, which again doesn't necessarily mean it can get deep. Avatar exists, but
exactly.
The deep philosophical themes of K-On! Fun is fun.
Hey, that's fine. Fluff is good too.
Yes, it can be. So, what is okay? So the Japanese title, I'm going to try to read this off. Tsukinako ga magane wo wasureta. The girl I like forgot her glasses. And according to the description that I could pull from MangaDex, Komura is a middle school boy who is head over heels in love with his next seat neighbor, Mie, a girl with terrible eyesight who just can't get used to carrying her glasses, often leaving them at home or accidentally breaking them. He opts to help her as much as he possibly can, and through those efforts, she begins getting acquainted with his kindness. Will she reciprocate? That's a cute premise, not gonna lie.
Yeah, it just seems totally innocent. Perfectly fitting for family anime. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Manga. That's why I selected it. I'm pretty sure that was my suggestion for this month. It's been sitting in my to-read list for some time now. So maybe I've been terrible at this, actually making time to read stuff. I'm still trying to catch up on Spy Family, for example.
Oh yeah. It's so good.
I know it is good. I think I'm in like chapter 20 right now. And it's
you're almost there.
Yeah, I'm almost. I just got to carve out the time to actually read it in the midst of everything else that I do with myself. But yeah, this one seems just really, really cute. And I'm hoping to be able to, again, carve out the time for that. So since none of us have any...
girl intensifies.
Oh, no. So, again, considering the fact that none of us have any immediate familiarity, there's not much that we can pose to say that we can say in its favor, aside from it just looks really cute and we're ready to get into it. But what we're more ready to get into right now is our anime selections for the month. The first one, the family anime. This is another one that's been sitting on my watch list for some time. But the title is My Next Life as a Villainess, All Routes Lead to Doom.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a light novel title.
Yes. And actually, I think I've lost my place for the description of it. But
I've
I
been kind of
actually did
liking this.
start.
I've been liking this influx of isekai where people transported to the other worlds like aren't the hero, but they're supposed to be the villain, and then they sort of like and they either know that or they learn it and they try to make the best of the situation.
Something of the sort. Well, according to my anime list, synopsis reads most people will prefer being the protagonists of a world full of adventure, being in a game or in another world, but unfortunately, a certain girl is not so lucky. Regaining the memories of her past life, she realizes that she was born in the world of Fortune Lover, one of the games she used to play. Unfortunately, the character she was reincarnated into, Katarina Claes, or however you pronounce that, is the game's main antagonist, who faces utter doom in every ending. Using her extensive knowledge of the game, she takes it upon herself to escape from the chains of this accursed destiny. However, this will not be an easy feat, especially since she needs to be cautious as to not set off death flags that may speed up the impending doom she is trying to avoid. Even so, to make a change that will affect the lives of everyone around her, she strives not as the heroine, but as the villainess. So I actually took the time to start off viewing this. I've watched the first 2 episodes, or like 1.5 episodes actually. And yeah, it's about this loser otaku who dies and gets reincarnated as the primary antagonist of a high class dating sim, you could call it. You got Fortune Lover. You play as this young, frumpish, high class girl who's trying to win the affections of these various beaux of varying degrees of husbando material. And where she is in the game right now is that she is the person that the player is trying to work against. So this is essentially a wrestle against fate, you could call it. Because as the game is designed, she is designed to lose. She's designed to end up in a bad or unfortunate situation no matter what decisions are made. And now she's trying to manipulate the situation to her favor. Interesting premise. I'm not going to lie. I came into this with very low expectations, but it's a pretty compelling mechanical premise.
I've read a manga with a similar premise before, although quite differently, where um, where similar otaku loser became the villainess of her favorite game, but what she wanted to do was set up her favorite husbando character with the main character when she comes in. So she's trying to like create all this like catastrophe and stuff like that. But the problem is she's dumb as rocks. So every time she tries to do something bad, it ends up like uh, turning into a good thing and screwing up the timeline. Like she in the prince in the story is sort of like a super genius, kind of like the type that's just like just like it's nobody can relate to him because he's just so far high above. Um, and so like during one of her tirades, she talks about a plague that's supposed to happen some years later, and the prince goes to like the royal doctor and helps like develop like a serum that completely levels out the plague, like and nips it in the bud as it's happening. And she and like and she's trying. She's kind of like Satania. She tries so hard to be the villain, but sucks at it.
All right. Why am I so?
I noticed that the adaptation is being done by Silverlink, which they've kind of had their hands all over the isekai genre for a little while now. Wise Man's Grandchild, Beaufree, and then they're also doing that other popular series from this season, Misfit of Demon King Academy, that people keep talking about. So this is kind of their niche, at least as of recently.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of strange. I find it rather ironic that both of our anime selections this month are both isekai of one sort or another.
Yeah, there's so many of them. It's
Well, yeah, ever since Sword Art Online, isekai just became the thing to make.
Even though Sword Art Online is technically not an isekai,
It could be argued that it is.
Technically.
It could be argued that it is. I can definitely see the argument for it. But the
Hmm.
other selection, right before we get into our main topic, is the mature anime selection. And this is one that has a bit of a cult fan base, I would say. But this is the first time that I actually got around to watching it. And this is the saga of Tanya the Evil.
Oh, sure.
Ah,
Yeah,
little lolly Nazi.
yes. And this is a strange one. It is a reincarnation isekai of a sort.
Hmm.
After the source of that time I got reincarnated as a slime, except this one's a little bit more intriguing than just a guy who gets everything that he wants and then some. Uh, Synopsis from my anime list: Tanya Dergrachov is a young soldier infamous for predatorial-like ruthlessness and an uncanny tactical aptitude, earning her the nickname of the Devil of the Rhine. Underneath her innocuous appearance, however, lies the soul of a man who has challenged being X, the self-proclaimed god, to a battle of wits, which resulted in him being reincarnated as a little girl into a world of magical warfare. Hell-bent on defiance, Tanya resolves to ascend the ranks of her country's military as it slowly plunges into world war, with only being X proving to be the strongest obstacle in recreating the peaceful life she once knew. But her perceptive actions and combat initiative have an unintended side effect, propelling the mighty empire into becoming one of the most powerful nations in mankind's history. So it starts off with just this regular business dude who's a bit of a jerk, really doesn't take any of his subordinates at his job seriously, until one of them eventually has enough of his nonsense and pushes him into an oncoming train. And right before he gets killed by the train, it seems as though the voice of God interjects, freezes time, and gives him an opportunity for redemption. And his opportunity for redemption comes in the form of being reincarnated into this fantasy world that is more or less essentially based on the world of Imperial Germany circa late 19th century, early 20th century. And he takes it upon himself, as the synopsis said, to act in defiance to this god whom he mockingly calls Being X, to rise through the ranks and prevent his own death. Because the next time he dies, supposedly, there's no chance for reincarnation after that point. So, we're seeing basically what would happen if Imperial Germany was instead operated by a little girl with a megalomania complex.
And a severe case of the Nietzsche.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, yeah, pretty defiant atheist he is.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I know a lot of people really like this series, and it's kind of got that darker edge to it. As I believe it's like I believe it is technically classified as seinen, but I'd have to double check. But yeah, I haven't personally watched this series myself, but I know that it was really popular, and I think it's getting its next season already
Oh
greenlit,
goodness.
right? Maybe,
Um,
or I
uh,
could be missing understanding. I'd have to look it up.
it's finished airing according to this. 12 episodes long. It first aired in 2017. There's no
Okay,
evidence of it
I
being adapted further than that.
I
There
walked
is a
back what I
manga
was saying
though.
then.
There is the manga though, which I believe,
Yes, there
of
is.
course, takes it further.
Yeah, there is a manga. I'm not sure if the anime has adapted the manga in full, but
The
yes.
manga is not the original version either, though.
Oh,
Really?
really?
No, it's a light novel series.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
One of those deals.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, I watched the first two episodes of that one, and my initial reaction is this is the kind of reincarnation isekai that I can actually get into, as opposed to the other one with a really stupid long name. That
It's also got like a really nice design aesthetic to it that
it
isn't.
does.
It sets it apart from others like garden variety isekai that are like very bubbly and saturated colors. This one's got more grit to it,
It
and
does.
like the facial animations on Tanya, just from what I've seen, the clips, I was like, wow, they do some really good line work and making her just look menacing. As yeah, it's
They
so that's
do.
good. I like
Yeah,
The
that.
I enjoy
eyelash,
that.
the
I think
eyelashes kind of add to it too. It's a little, uh, it's just something that kind of feels off in the right way about those eyelashes.
I don't know. I really kind of appreciate when a show can actually manage to do both something generic and yet push it to the point that it can do something a lot more uh, gritty and grisly in its expressions. Like that's one of the things that attracted me to Kakegurui, for,
Hmm.
for example, because at first glance the character designs really look pretty generic, But then when they start emoting, you're in a whole nother plane of
Yeah.
existence there with the kinds of expressions that they're able to pull off. It is absolutely spectacular.
Yeah,
But
they
yeah,
definitely push the
I'm
facial
enjoying it so
expressions
far.
to the extreme.
They do. They do, and it's brilliant. And they still keep with the generic wide, uh, wide appeal aesthetic.
Yep.
At the same time, it's genius. But yeah, that's Saga. That's our selections for the month. All of those are available on pretty standard streaming services. Both My Next Life is a Villainess and Saga of Tanya the Evil. They're both available in dub and sub on Crunchyroll. So if you have that, have at it. But the next thing that we're going to be talking about here, and this is going to be the subject of discussion for the brunt of this particular episode. This is a title that was released way back in 2011. Originally premiered in 2011, but it still has a major following that continues to this very day and seems to be offering an opportunity for relief to a lot of people in the midst of our troubling pandemic times. And this is Anohana, the flower that we saw that day. And its original Japanese title, it does not actually translate to that. The title translates to "We still don't know the name of the flower we saw that day," is the original title.
Yep.
But this is whenever people bring up titles that will grip your heartstrings, it's really, really hard to find a list of those selections that does not include this at some point or another. Because it's kind of a sin not to. And according to the synopsis that I was able to pull up, it follows Jinta Yadomi is peacefully living as a recluse, spending his days away from school and playing video games at home instead. It kind of sounds like me. One hot summer day, his childhood friend, Meiko Minma Hanma, appears and pesters him to grant a forgotten wish. He pays her no mind, which annoys her, but he really doesn't care. After all, Minma already died years ago. At first, Jinta thinks that he is merely hallucinating due to the summer heat, but he is later on convinced that what he sees truly is the ghost of Minma. Jinta and his group of childhood friends grew apart after her untimely death, but they are drawn together once more as they try to lay Minma's spirit to rest. Reliving their pain and guilt, will they be able to find the strength to help not only Minma move on, but themselves as well? So, this really it approaches itself as a very conventional slice of life anime, but there is a strong fantastical element at the heart of it that it manages to bring in a very, very natural way. Like, it's so unassuming about the fact that, yeah, here's a standard summer love slice of life anime, but hey, one of the main characters is a ghost that only one of the characters can see. Deal with
and
it.
they even take that pretty well because they actually establish sort of natural rules with that. Like, she's affected by gravity, she can't walk through walls, she can only interact with things that she had a connection to in life.
Right.
And even when it gets to that point where she's moving around objects and people are seeing it, you don't see the objects moving as if they're floating. The cameras are angled in such a way that they don't show the entire object, and it could very well have been somebody behind the camera moving it by hand.
Yeah.
I don't know about calling it a slice of life is a little weird to me. I mean, it's a slice of life in so much as anything is really a slice of life. It feels more like a drama because it's kind of like just this one section of their lives, and then they move on from it. It doesn't. I don't know. Slice of life is generally more episodic in my experience, which this is one ongoing narrative from the point of Menma's arrival to her spoilers, inevitable disappearance. But I don't know. I think one of the first things that usually comes up in conversations about Anohana is that it's penned by Mori Okada, which is one of my personal favorite screenwriters in the industry nowadays. But yeah, just her understanding of human emotion and the relationships that people have to each other and the subtle nuances that we carry from one interaction with a person to another is kind of as far as my opinion is concerned, is kind of near the top of the industry right now. I think she does it all very well. She has a good understanding of the human psyche.
Yes,
And
she
even
does. I can say that.
even the voice actors, both dub and sub, do a pretty
Yes.
good job of that.
No, they really do get in the character strongly, which is unusual. You know, I grew up with so much of the voice acting that came from so many of the superhero cartoons that I used to watch, like Justice League and what have you. And I've been rewatching a lot of those shows, and I have to say, from a voice acting perspective, they're incredibly wooden. They're very very undynamic. You know, it's like these people are just showing up and reciting their lines so they can get a line of weed or something. But no, these actors, and again, yes, both in Japanese and in English, they really do bring out the most vibrant parts of every one of their characters' feelings at every point in which they need to be. And that's something I can at least say with some level of alacrity, I think is the word I want to use. But I think we can get into more of the critical stance after we go over like how the story progresses from beginning to end. So it starts off like the very first thing we see is, you know, Jinta interacting with this ghost girl Minma, and it seems to have been going on for such a long time because he treats it in such a lackadaisical manner, like almost like an annoyance. You know, like seeing that aggravating mailman that constantly wants to stop you and hold a conversation every time you go out to the mailbox. But
Actually, I think the indignation was just mostly kind of like a denial. Like he puts it off as just like, oh, it's just a summer fever kind of thing.
right.
Right. I mean, he thinks he's hallucinating at first.
Mhm.
And I
And
mean,
my-
who wouldn't? Why would you want to acknowledge that your dead friend has been chilling in your bedroom all summer?
Mhm.
And before we continue, just because I've watched a few of your guys' episodes, how into spoilers are we going? Like, how are we going all the way to the finale?
We just dive
all the
in.
way, all the way. But we are going to put a warning to the viewers: if you do not want to be spoiled on Anohana, it is available fully in both dub and sub on Netflix. So if you want to treat yourself to that, we will be waiting when you get back. But in the meantime, yes, we're going full spoiler territory in here. So
Okay, good.
So we want
And
no-
if
We want no
if
respect for the
anybody is
conversation.
here who hasn't or is listening or will listen who hasn't watched the series yet, especially if the current state of affairs with the world and like you is heavier than normal for you right now. Speaking just from my own sort of testimony with the series, 2-3 years ago, it broke me out of one of like the heaviest depression spells I'd had.
Oh, wow.
Between this and Violet Evergarden, I did them back to back, which was just an emotional panacea that just freaking floored me. But I started with this one, and it was very, I don't know, it was just very enlightening, and it really kind of gets into the core of feelings. It teaches. There's a how did he phrase it? There's a YouTuber, an AnyTuber named Mother's Basement, who said that
Yes.
he described it as a
yes.
series that teaches you how to cry, and that is true.
it's quite explicit in its intentions because that is part of like Minma's aim in her
Yes, it is.
afterlife. Her aim is trying to get Jinta to break out of his emotional constipation, if you want to call it, and teach him how to feel again. Essentially,
The main theme definitely is catharsis.
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, that can definitely be said because I think you did bring up Mother's Basement. I think one of the more enlightened remarks that he made about the show is that there is not one protagonist in this show. There are 5.
6.
Yeah. 6.
You're six protagonists over the course of this show, and they all have their own arcs that individually and collectively work in a great synthesis and a grand dynamism that really cannot be overlooked if you want to appreciate what the show has to offer in its entirety.
And it
And
does
the
it
fact
all
that
in
they were
11
able-
episodes.
Yeah, the fact that we were able to pull that off in just 11 episodes with no need or promise or claim of a follow-up season, which, dear God, don't let them do that.
No, that would be terrible. Don't do it. I mean, they had the movie, which I'll admit I actually haven't seen the movie yet.
Oh, really?
I want to, but
Uh-huh.
I want to. I just haven't actually pulled the trigger on doing it. But there is that movie, which is a sequel as far as I understand it. But
Okay. No,
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that.
I think it's like a sequel recap kind of thing.
is it one of those kind of like the Made in Abyss movie?
I think so.
Okay,
I am
that's not nearly
waiting-
as exciting then.
I
You
am
know,
waiting for that third Mate in Abyss movie to be streamable because, like, I really want to see that Bondrewd arc.
Oh man. I mean, not to like deviate from the course too much, but me too, man. Dude, I've been waiting for that since I read it in the original source material. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is gonna be
Dude,
amazing.
same, same. Then people will understand why I say that Bondrewd is worse than Show Tucker.
Yeah, exactly.
oh yeah,
It's
I
like
get
he's the
you.
same concept, but a lot worse and way harder to kill.
And a much larger scale, too.
Yeah, that's the thing to look forward to. But
Midi
back on
Best Girl 2016. Continue.
uh-huh. Back on Anohana, I was rather perplexed with how, because in addition to juggling 6 protagonists, the show is also basically trying to reconcile 2 timelines with the central pain going on here. The fact that Menma and Jinta and all of his childhood friends were really close together over 5 years ago until Menma tragically died in an accident. She accidentally fell into a river. Ever since then, the group has kind of grown apart, even though prior to that they had identified themselves sort of like the Goonies in a way. What do they call themselves? The Peace
The Super
Busters?
Peace Bust the
Super
Super
Peace.
Peace Busters.
Super Peace Busters, excuse me. Yeah, once Menma's tragic premature demise came about, they grew apart, and a lot of their character also broke apart as well. But when they through a series of contrived events, when they finally get back together, and Jinta deliberately brings them together to try to bring some solace to this ephemeral phenomena, this paranormal activity that he's trying to reconcile here, they really do seem like completely different people who have, in one sense, moved on, but in another sense, there's a huge chunk of them that is quite literally stuck in the past.
Yeah.
Uh, that's where that's where this can
Particularly
go
where Minma is
into.
concerned.
That's where this can go into one of the points that was shown in a video that I saw on this. Basically, there's two main kinds of grief.
Themes. Oh, grief.
There's
Yeah.
uncomplicated grief, and then there's complicated grief. So, and there's kind of like some parts before that. There's acute grief, which is when the tragedy is happening right now or happened in the very
Mhm.
recent past. And over time, with healthy coping mechanisms, the acute grief becomes integrated grief, which then becomes the uncomplicated grief. But if that transition never happens, the acute grief will over time become complicated grief, and you can kind of tell like which one of these characters, even Menma, which one of these 6 characters, or even like Menma's family, like which of these characters have a complicated grief and an uncomplicated grief.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, I've been working with government and military contractors for over half of my entire life now. And one of the lessons that one of the people I used to work for taught me is problems don't get better with time. They only get better with active resolution. So if you're not actively trying to fix the problem isn't going to get fixed. And
Right.
that's kind of the harsh lesson that all of these protagonists come to terms with. Because they all try in various ways to flee from the pain of their past grief and guilt and all
I was like,
other hangups.
all of them are experiencing some variety of survivor's guilt.
Yes. Some
And
version of
every
it,
every single one of them has a very valid reason to feel guilty as well.
of course.
Yeah.
So we need to get into the other characters that make up this entourage besides just Jinta and Menma. One of whom is Naruko Anaru Anjo, who is a childhood friend. Displays a cold attitude toward Jinta, especially while in front of her fans, but secretly she's worried about his well-being. She's described as a person who's easily influenced by others, hanging out with and playing along with the actions of other girls around her, even when she doesn't agree with them. She had admired Menma and strove to be like her when they were children, though she was simultaneously envious of her relationship with Jinta. So she's had hidden feelings for Jinta for the longest, but never came to terms with it because she was, especially as a child, she was extremely self-conscious about her looks, especially when compared to Menma. She always thought Menma was so gorgeous, and she herself was so unattractive. It seemed like a lost cause for her to have any kind of interest in Jinta. And
Which is a
probably-
complicated thing to explore, considering that they were like 12 years old at the time or something.
Exactly. No,
Yeah.
they're way too young to be.
They were like right
handling
on the cusp of like going
adolescence.
through that stage of life. So
Exactly.
Mhm.
So, because I think for me at least, and this is a pretty big character moment in the show, is she comes to terms with the fact the biggest weight of her guilt is the fact that she actually felt a little bit glad when she heard that Minma had died.
yeah,
When Naruto heard that Minma had died, it gave her a bit of relief, and she is deeply, deeply ashamed of herself in her later years to come to terms with that.
And
which
Like, one
what
of
a
her best friends
great
died.
character development. I love that so much. I mean, it's super sad, but from a writing perspective, that is
Yes.
something that is deeply unexplored. It's like being able to like explore the idea that we have all these expectations we put on ourselves and of others. Like her like I'm fumbling my words really hard here. I apologize.
Take your time. Take your time.
But just her perception of Menma was crushing her. And
Yes.
so when the shadow of that was taken away, it gave, I mean, she was still getting used to this whole growing up and like starting to love people thing and starting to envy people and admire people. She was just getting into that sort of mindset, and this to enter that stage of life and have Menma be your perceived opponent for romantic advancement was just I understand why she would think that it was like a relief, and that the series decided to go this way and like turn that relief into a source of shame that haunts her for the next like 10 years is fantastic.
It's kind of, in that respect, similar to the kind of pain that Cain felt after murdering his brother Abel. You know, Menma, in that sense, was sort of the ideal for Anaru. But after Menma died, well, she was rid of her ideal, which is bad, but at the same time, she was rid of the thing that judged her and told her that she was not good enough, which immediately does present some relief. But at the same time, realizing Menma was not just an ideal, she was my friend. She was an actual human being, distinct from me. And the fact that she's gone now and never coming back, and the fact that I feel some sense of gladness about that, like, what a terrible person am I? In that
Especially, and it's made especially good because, of course, Menma wouldn't want her to feel that way at all.
No.
And is the opposite of that. If she knew that that's how Anaru had been feeling, she would have comforted her.
Oh, absolutely, because Menma was just an all-around a good person.
Menma was not only the glue that kept the whole like group together. She was like, narratively speaking, she is like the amalgamation and abstraction of all of the best parts of the 5 other Super Peacebusters. And
yeah, Menma is kind of unrealistic in that way, but it's but it's okay because she's been cemented into this role. Like when she died, her mind like froze in the state that she was in, which was this like really innocent, very kind-hearted person. So she hasn't had time to get jaded by growing up and going through guilt, and like she hasn't been buffeted by life as much as the others. So she can be that glue for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she's solid. She's frozen in time, makes her she's on solid ground rather than on the sand that gets blown by the winds of change and chance. In that respect.
And sort of like so I might mess up the character's name, Anaru's.
Yes.
With her coping, just sort of like passively like assimilating herself into the people around her. She's kind of like hanging out with the Gyaru crowd, and just very surface level friendships. And like it does like the dangers of that kind of thing actually does come to a head at that one point where she goes to the karaoke bar with her friends, and then one of like the older like businessmen is like, hey, let's go to a love hotel, and it's like, and that was kind of the point. That was the teetering edge of the logical end of that kind of mentality, where it's just sort of like, well, none of this, just like kind of like a nihilistic, like nothing matters. But then like when it came time to actually kind of commit to that kind of mindset, she got scared.
Of course. You never know what you want until you actually get it. In that respect.
And I guess like before going further, I think we should like sort of like describe the the events that happened on the day that Menma died, because that's a connecting point for everything. Um,
Oh
so
yes,
so
yes,
basically, what happened was um, it was like Yukimitsu and Honoru
yes.
um, planned to make Jinta confess his feelings for Menma, because like it's kind of one of those things like everybody knew, but nobody wanted to talk about
Right,
it.
right.
And
Calling out the elephant in the room.
yeah, and so when Honoru posed the question, "What do you think of Menma?"
Right.
Jinta, with his habits of running away from his feelings, like literally ran away, and Menma chased after him. And at that point, Yukimitsu, who had a crush on Menma but felt inadequate to Jinta, awkwardly confessed to her, but like she um, she kind of felt the more urgency to go run after Jinta.
Hmm.
And when she's chasing after him, she like trips, hits her head on a rock, and uh,
Gets swept away in a
drowns,
river.
like drowns in the river
Oh,
and gets swept away.
wait, do we know that she hit her head on a rock? I don't recall that exact detail.
So
I can't say. I just recently rewatched it. It's Yukiatsu, by the way, is the one you're
oh,
thinking of.
Yukiatsu.
Yukiatsu
Yeah.
is his name. Uh, yeah, I don't know if she actually hit her head on a rock, but it is certain she fell into the river and was swept away by the river, and that's what caused her demise. That much is certain.
Hmm. And so where that leaves Yukiatsu's friend later. What was her name again?
Sudoku.
Sudoku.
Sudoku. So like Sudoku tried to, or like had a thing for Yukiatsu
Yes.
and tried to throw a wrench in the plan by telling Menma what was going to go down. You know, Menma is just kind of like, oh, it's just like what, kind of like whatever happens happens. I'm not going to let that bother me.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, Popo, oh my
I love
gosh,
Popo.
Popo,
I love Popo so much.
Popo's the
Popo.
best. I
Popo.
swear. There's a
The
Popo
man who
who's
needs all the hugs.
yes, he is the kind of like the, I guess you could say he was like sort of like the comic relief of the group.
Yes,
Yes.
Um,
for sure.
and
Yes.
he saw Nenma get carried away.
Right. He is the only one
Yeah,
who was a direct witness to her death.
Hmm.
yeah, that's actually like a really big
Not
point. That
even like
doesn't
just
show
her
up until
death.
the end of the story.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and not even just her death. Like it's unknown whether or not like she was in the process of drowning or had already drowned.
Right.
Right. So he could have potentially saved her if she was
That's what
still
he
alive,
thinks.
but he was afraid and ran away.
Right.
And
And since then,
And
ran
it
away
says,
all across the world.
yeah,
yeah, he fled the country. No, he tried everything he could to drown out that image of okay, pun unintended, but get rid of that image of Menma being swept away in the river and his feeling completely helpless to save her at the time.
hmm
And that's the thing that he's
And
suppressed all this time.
no matter how far in the world he got, he always ended up back at that clubhouse.
He did. Hmm. It's like it's like fate is just telling him you need to sort this out before you move on because it's going to hold you back no matter where you go.
And it really makes sense because he was the one that was most eager to go along with Jinta.
Yes, because he greatly admired Genta. Like Genta was like the cool older brother he wished he always had.
yeah,
And he's
because
one of those guys
when
who just feels happy to be included most of the time.
mhm.
That's his
And when
attitude.
Jinta mentioned that he was seeing Menma around,
Yes.
the only person in the Super Peacebusters who didn't immediately assume that he was being delusional was Popo, who just kind of accepted it and was like, "That's awesome, man. I can't see her, but I hope this is true."
Uh huh.
And he just kind of went on that way. I do want to clarify: have we talked about why was back? Like what her goal is?
Oh yes, what her wish was. Well, over the first few episodes, she can't even remember. She just knows if I'm going to move on to the next life, I need to sort something out here. I have a wish that I need fulfilled.
Mhm.
But eventually, we do come to terms with the fact that she needs to reconcile with her friends. Is the
And
long and
keep a
short of it.
promise and keep a promise to Jinta's
Jinta's
mom,
mother.
who
Ah,
died shortly after Menma.
Yeah,
right, right.
because yeah, Jinta's mom wanted Jinta to like be able to like expose like get into his feelings again because he shut them out. And he
Right.
was like, please, Menma, help him cry, basically. Help him become vulnerable with people again. And so that's kind of a sub goal.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. But what was the main goal besides that?
It was just to help her friends basically accept that they were not at fault for what happened.
Right. Right.
But
Yes,
she doesn't
that's
know that at the
exactly
time. They just have to reach that point organically through rebuilding their old relationships and coming back into their own childhood and their own, like, where they were at that point in time. And instead of going down a path of resentment and guilt, starting from that same spot and going a healthier direction.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So getting back into some of the other characters, we mentioned Yukiatsu. He was another pretty complicated character.
I did
that
not
I
like
found.
him at first.
Neither did
Yeah.
I. I still kind of didn't
I
like
mean-
him even after everything was said and done.
And see, like, I get that he's like intended to not be likable. He's a jerk by default. But I
Yes.
don't know. I liked Bakugo immediately, so that doesn't necessarily do anything for me. But there was just a pretentiousness to him that I didn't like. But man, once things start rolling with him, you're like, this guy, he's got some serious baggage he needs to unpack.
Serious. Yeah, and all that aloof attitude is really just a front for that internal brokenness. You know, he seems like, you know, the ladies' man of the group as he grows up. You know, he's good looking, he's athletic, he's popular. You know, all the guys want to be him, all the girls want to be with him, but he's still internally, again, stuck in the past with what happened to Menma because his feelings for Menma were quite intense.
And he still feels inadequate to Jinta because like the one
Right.
thing that he wanted, Jinta got,
And
and
he never did,
all-
and never
and-
can.
all chances of that are gone.
Yes, exactly, because Menma's dead. And so his bitterness and resentment towards Jinta basically knows no bounds. No matter how successful he becomes, he could become the wealthiest CEO in the world later on in life. If he doesn't get this set up, he will still carry this bitterness and resentment and contempt for Jinta, simply for the fact that he had something that he can never have now. So that's something that basically his character arc is coming to terms with his own insecurities about that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, the next one, Sudoku, is another one, or Chiriko is her actual name. The quiet observer of the group, extremely serious, logical personality. She becomes, if I'm not mistaken, just as much of a recluse as Jinta does after this cataclysmic event.
Mm-hmm. Although she's a bit more, she's a bit
She's
harder
studious.
to crack. She's a bit
Yeah.
harder to crack for analysis,
Uh-huh.
simply because like she, like as true to her character, she kind of like doesn't put herself up front. Very
Yes, she
often.
gets probably the least amount of FaceTime, and it's
Yes.
by design. Like, she does
Uh-huh.
that on purpose.
But it's
Right.
because like as opposed to Anaru, who like had hopes of like becoming like or surpassing Menma, like she just gave up. She just admitted that like it's never gonna happen. So like whatever little thing I can get is like I'm just gonna have to accept as good enough because I will never be good enough.
Right. And it's, yeah, like you said, it's, other side of the same coin. Sudoku is, because she is still to this day fond of Yukiatsu, but
Yes.
his emotions are cemented in the day that Menma died, and so
Right.
she is constantly trying to improve herself and make her more like this person who's not there anymore, and so
Right.
she's competing with a literal ghost that
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
not possible. She's doomed to fail, because there's no way that, unless Yukiatsu moves on from that, she's just going to be constantly just in their shadow.
And even at that point, even when Yukiatsu like started moving on, he didn't go to her. He went to Anaru and awkwardly asked her out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which
Awkwardly.
is and which is part of is like is I'm sorry, like what was her name again?
Which one? Suruko.
Sudoku.
Sudoku.
So like Sudoku, like said in that last episode, like it's like even if Menmo was out of the picture, it still would have been Anaru instead because you kind of had this like connection that like I can't that like that I don't have. Like you conspired to put everything out in the open, so that when it like falls apart, you swoop in on both your interests, and meanwhile, it's just like I have no chance.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
she's on the negative end of a non-reciprocating romantic feeling,
And
which is,
she was
always a
actually
fun feeling.
she
No,
was
it's not.
actually jealous of Honoru. She wasn't jealous of Memma. She was jealous of Honoru
Yeah.
Right.
because even though like Menma is just like beyond like reachable, especially to Sudoku, um, Honoru like still had this sort of like dumb hope,
Uh huh.
and that was what she was jealous of.
Uh
Yeah.
huh. Yeah, I think is the major difference is that in a sense both Anaru and Sudoku were competing with a dead girl for the affections of some guy, but this kind of harkens back to a fundamental issue that a lot of more mature women have is that they cannot tolerate an unconscious man.
Yeah.
Both of their frustrations are dealing with the men in their life not being to wake up from their fantasies or from
Yes.
their past hangups. In Anaru's case, her frustration was the fact that Jinta is now a shut in and a recluse who doesn't want to interact with anybody anymore. He's dropped out of school. He's just stuck at home playing video games and not interacting with anybody. She can't stand that. And she will not tolerate that. And she does everything in her power to try to wake him up from that. And who know? And how ironic it is that is the dead girl that she's been competing with that is instrumental in doing just that for her. And same thing in Sudoko's case, because the guy she likes is, in a sense, dead to himself, putting on this stupid, superficial veneer of success just to coax his ego as making himself feel superior to the guy that he's always competed with. But again, he's also in a bit unwoken, a bit unconscious of himself. And so Suriko is also experiencing similar frustration in that she cannot be that beacon that finally wakes up Yukiatsu from his slumber, in a sense. That's a
No, no.
very, very insightful bit of character development there as well that I was not expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that is articulated as well as it is because the series was written by a woman.
Yeah.
She's probably had that kind of experience. I don't know if she did necessarily. I read her autobiography, but she never really went into her relationships. It was mostly just her life as a truant growing up and then her professional life thereafter. But I wouldn't be surprised if some part of her own experience went into that. It's
Yeah,
kind
I
of the
wouldn't
way
be
these
surprised
things
either.
go.
Yeah, very much so. So we did touch a little bit on Popo. And again, Popo is just the big bear that needs a hug from
Mm-hmm.
everybody. He's the
It's
one
like
who,
the moment that he came clean with like with what he witnessed. That was just like throughout like the 10 episodes of build up on that final 11th episode where everything comes crashing down. Sorry,
honestly,
that
he
it was
seems,
like that moment when he confessed was what broke me.
honestly, he seems like if this were to play out in a more realistic sense, like if they never got their sense of closure, they never got their sense of reconciliation with what happened to Menma, I would honestly wager that Popo would probably be the first one to take his own life from the grief.
Hmm.
Yeah, he's
Because
got that Robin Williams vibe to him. He's just like he's
exactly,
there to make everybody laugh and smile, and then whenever he's by himself, he just falls apart.
exactly, exactly. He seems like he has that kind of a character. He is Pagliacci, in a sense. So that is really the long and short of all the characters' arcs.
Ooh, but
Goes on.
What about Memma's family?
Memma's family. What was
There's
that?
an interesting dynamic there in that the father,
Yeah,
I,
the father
the
tries
father
to
had
push.
this
The father tries to push everybody to move on, like
immediately.
at a faster pace. Meanwhile, the
Yes.
mom is like really
Oh man.
stuck in the past so much so that she's like that she actually is like forgetting the rest of her family that's still alive. And that really came to a head when Menma's younger brother like said it was like after the fireworks is like, hey mom, he was like, I grew 3 centimeters this year. Did you know that? And just like
Yeah,
and and she's like,
calls her out for being stuck in her grief.
mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
And not only like her grief, but like being resentful to to the rest of the Super Peace Busters, like going as far as to basically saying, "Why didn't you die instead of her?"
Yes. Hmm.
She basically threw salt into the wound of their survivor's guilt. That was one of the moments that stood out to me the most, is the fact that she is so bitter and resentful about this after so many years that she actually holds those who are still living and who knew her closely accountable for it. She's
And
holding
again,
them
I know we've
culpable.
said this a couple of times, but we need to address for just emphasis that they were children at the time. So she's
Right.
holding all of this hatred for children who, like, have very understandable fears about what could have happened that day, and they were just being kids.
Right.
But she doesn't care because she lost her daughter, and she needs some scapegoat to push all of
Right.
her negative feelings onto.
Honestly, if I were to do a sequel, I would rather the focus be on her reconciliation and her coming to terms with this in the same way that our six main protagonists got.
Yeah.
That would be the fan fiction that I would write if I were so inclined. But yeah. Now, as for Memba herself, can it be said that she actually has much of a development arc in a way?
No,
You
she's
know
got a
that?
flat character arc. It doesn't change. She's the anchor for the others.
Right.
If
Yeah.
she
So she
had
doesn't have to
if she
change.
had to change it all, it would kind of defeat the point. She's supposed to be the one that they orbit around.
Right. Yeah, you
And,
can say
and
that
like,
in a similar sense. This has been said oftentimes about the MCU that Captain America's character is a lot like that. He almost never changes in his character over the course of the story because he's already basically perfect, and he's just the glue or the ideal that all the other characters orient around and try to be like. And in a similar sense, Menma holds that place in this
I was like, I think
plot.
Menma encapsulates that idea even more than Captain America does.
Yeah, I
Because
agree. I agree.
they are literally like all of their personalities and who they are is married to some element of Menma's personality.
Right.
which if done wrong, like she could have very easily been a Mary Sue.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but the good prevention to doing that was only letting Jinta see her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
At first.
and
Yeah.
so because of that, everything that the others did was of their own free will, not because it was imposed on them by the power of Mary Sue.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. And it's probably it's understandable that she would initially only reveal herself to Jinta because he's the one that she had the strongest feelings for, and of course the one that he to whom she had some sort of vow for his mother. You know, his mother. No, she made a promise to Jinta's mother to bring him out of his emotional funk. So it makes a lot of pragmatic sense, not just emotional, but even just straight pragmatic sense, why she would initially only reveal herself so thoroughly to Jinta,
Yeah.
even though he didn't ask for it and he didn't do anything to earn it.
And
I
even
want to hold on. I want to clarify.
Go ahead.
I don't think she chose to only do Jinta because
You
they
think so?
later on no, because later on when they're trying to prove her existence and everyone's like gathered, they're like, okay, fine, prove it. She ends up having to like pick up things and like writing on them, like her journal, to show that
Right.
she is there because she can't like reveal herself to them.
Right.
At least not
And
until the
I'm
end.
not saying
Not until the very end. Yeah.
Yeah.
right. I'm not suggesting that that was like a conscious, deliberate action on her choice, on her point. It's something more subconscious to her that because she had such deep feelings for Jinta and because she had made that promise to Jinta's mother, it makes perfect pragmatic sense that when she does reappear as a ghost, it would be exclusively to Jinta at first. Because that's where her business is, her unfinished business. You know, oftentimes in ghost stories, it's kind of a staple of the genre that ghosts come back to the living world precisely because they have some sort of unfinished business. And this is very much in that vein. And her unfinished business at first is almost entirely through Jinta. It also helps with the fact that Jinta was like the de facto leader of the Peacebusters group, the Super Peacebusters. So, you know, there's a number of reasons as to why it makes perfect plot sense as to why that occurred at first. But yes, of course, go ahead.
No, I like that as well because when we see him as a child, he kind of has the feeling of being like a Shonen Jump protagonist. He's just constant optimism and happy-go-lucky and like very confident and like raises up the people around him. And I like that Mari Okada took that kind of character is like, okay, what happens in his life if we break him with something that he really wants and needs? And it turns him into a recluse. Yeah, it's
Uh-huh.
like it's essentially it's like what if Naruto Naruto but without Iruka like bringing him like showing him that somebody still loves him basically.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Yeah. Excellent stuff. Now, I can say this: it did not hit me on a cathartic level as strongly as it did a lot of other people who rank this as among their favorite anime of all time. I think the biggest complaint that I have for me, and I was actually talking with about this with my library's anime group, I found that the points of the story that were supposed to be dramatic wound up being more mellow dramatic than anything.
That's
And
fair.
that kind of took me out of the experience more than one occasion. I've said a lot of
Yep.
praise about this show, that it's very well written, it's very well conceived. Mari Okada definitely shows deep existential insight and understanding into the human psyche over the course of this. In terms of execution, I've seen better. Like I
That's
just
fine.
came,
Yeah.
recently I came off of Your Lie in April, which I said I honestly think handled its emotional traumas and development in a much more believable fashion than Anohana did. Moments when
Okay.
all the characters are in the same room, literally giving full scale exposition on their feelings to each other, so that there's like no question about what they're thinking or feeling whatsoever. Everybody's basically just wearing their emotions on their sleeve in the most explicit way possible. That took me out of it.
And that's
It's
fair.
like, when it comes to emotional storytelling, less is more, I find. And I can understand why they would have to do that. Again, this is only 11 episodes long, and they have a lot of development to go over. So some sort of expositional contrivance was almost inescapable, in a sense.
Even then,
So
I
I'm-
think they
Go on.
did the best with. I think they did the best with what they had. Like
Mm-hmm.
it started with like one confession, and then it just like it poured
Domino
out.
effect into everybody.
It's like rape allegations. One of them is brave enough to make a confession, and then all of a sudden the other victims start making
That's
allegations. And even
Not
on
the comparison I would have
That
made.
is a
but it
terrible
works.
analogy.
it was the first thing that came to my. It was the first thing that came to my mind. But like
That says a lot about you.
Hey, it's all good. It's all good.
But anyway, it's like
Okay.
it's like. But
In nomine
it's,
Patre, Spiritus Sancto.
but
No,
anyway,
you're-
it's
you're,
like it's like it's like one person gets something out their chest, and then like it just it's
Yes.
it's kind of like a domino effect of like other people like just like
It's
the
like,
tensions
oh,
are the tensions
we're allowed to be that vulnerable
because
now.
the tension
Okay.
is broken here. I can get that tension out there now.
So it was
Right.
basically an impromptu Alcoholics Anonymous meeting.
What I would
Yeah.
say, no. What I would compare it to is it's like an altar call.
Okay.
It's so a lot of people have anxiety. At least young Christians would have anxiety about going up to an altar call because it feels weird and unnatural. But as soon
Right.
as one or two people do it, you see a lot more people start doing it after that because they aren't the first one anymore.
Right.
I
like
think it's a lot more like that.
Or like the first person who gets up for seconds at the wedding buffet.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That works too. Same concept.
We all know that whoever does that is a hero.
The first person to clap.
I will totally do that. I don't care.
Uh-huh.
So, are we mostly done with the story? Because I mean, we could go into how the ending is a great emotional climax, and they don't actually resolve every story thread, but they resolve all the big ones.
I can't say this that
Kind of like in Your Lie in April, they resolved the issue that needed to be resolved.
Uh-huh. I guess I could say if I were to revisit this in like the next 2 years, I may respond to it differently. I honestly think
Yes.
that most likely will happen. If I were to just give it a couple of years, come back into it on one stormy weekend and give it another revisit, I'd probably respond to it in a very different way than I did right
I mean,
now.
that's what happened with me with Mob Psycho. So yeah, probably I quit Mob Psycho 100 twice before going through it because I just
Wow.
wasn't feeling it at the time that I tried to watch it, and then I watched, and I'm usually not for spoilers with things that I have emotional attachments to already, but if
Yeah.
it's something that I don't care about, then sure. And I watched Super Eye Patch Wolf's video about Mob Psycho 100, and I was like, oh my god, I have to watch this now. So
Yes.
and when I was going through it, I realized that even the part that I quit before, I was enjoying it much more the
Yes.
third time because I was in a better headspace for it, and like more, it was more immediately the things it was talking about were more immediately present in my life. So I was like, okay, I can vibe with this now. We're on the same wavelength.
Yeah, yeah, and I suspect that that's something similar will happen to me with regard to Anohana, maybe in a year or two. But as it stands right now, I enjoyed it. I definitely have a lot of praise for it, but it didn't quite do it for me on a visceral level in a lot of ways for some of the reasons that I just cited off. It felt more melodramatic than actually dramatic.
Okay.
It was probably trying to do too much in too little bit of a time, and I've seen so many other stories collapse so much harder than this for similar reasons, but thankfully it did not end up a disaster. It just ended up as a really good emotional romp that I thought could have been done a little bit better if they had more time to do it.
Sure.
So, yeah,
I do,
that's my
if
stake.
if we're done with the story, I do want to talk about a couple of things that aren't story related, because I think
Go.
that's a lot of the production value is where the series really soared for me.
Go.
For starters, it did one of the things that I like most in anime. I love when series do this, in which every character changes clothes a lot. Like they all have their own gallery of like closet of clothes. You can see them mixing and matching like tops and bottoms like throughout the series. Like
Right.
some things will recur, but they'll be wearing a different undershirt or something. And I love when series will take the time to give characters that much nuance, especially when there's still a aesthetic overlay. Like Popo, even though he always changed clothes, he still always had like the open button-down shirt of some sort and
Right.
short, like cargo shorts of some
Right.
kind. And so you knew exactly what his visual motifs were, and it has that throughout all of them. I think except for Suruko, for the most part, didn't, because she was almost always in a school uniform. But
I also used
That's
flowers really
understand-
well.
And I
Yes.
hope everybody can appreciate that, because a common saying in animation, you don't get anything for free. So
Yeah.
when characters change clothes, that's a whole nother production that has to go through. You got to design the clothes, you got to do turnarounds, you got to do expression sheets and how the clothes is going to work every time you do it. Usually, that's why usually cartoon characters never change clothes, because that is an expense on the budget that they do not have to suffer under. But this one actually did that, and of course, it can even be a strong character moment, because one of the things that really revealed how broken up Yukiatsu particularly was with regard to Menma's death is the fact that he cross-dresses as Menma out in the forest during times
Yeah.
of very sharp feelings of grief.
yeah,
That really displayed how thoroughly on the meat hook in the past this man was internally.
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
He was
and then
that far gone.
this has kind of become a meme within the anime community now, but there's a song that plays in this series, and it's the song that made
yes.
me cry at the end. It's the Secret Base 10 Years After version.
Secret Base.
And like,
Yeah.
okay, the
Yeah.
entire soundtrack is good.
Yes.
It fits its emotional, like sonic aesthetic very well. It is nice to listen to. A lot of very soft, minimalist, like piano stuff like that. It's really nice. But that song just is an emotional just landmine, and it's so good.
3 notes
yeah.
of that song is like a Pavlovian response to my tear ducts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. As soon as it hits, you know it. But again, that's probably one thing that I will need the advantage of time and hindsight in order to get that kind of resonance, because again, I heard it so many times over the course of the show that it became more of a motif than an emotional landmine. You know, it's sort of like hearing the
That's
Batman
fair.
theme music over again. It's like, this is just the musical motif of the show and nothing more. But again, with time and hindsight, it most likely will affect me in a very, very different way. Like, I did listen to it in isolation just earlier today, and yeah, it affects me differently, even just off of that. Another element, talking of motifs, you know, one thing that a YouTuber whose name I cannot recall pointed out is that the language of flowers is a very common motif over the course of this show. You'll notice characters using various types of flowers that actually do have symbolic meaning at key character and plot moments. I think, and they do it a little bit on the nose at times. I think there is at one point in which Jinta recalls the name of a flower called Forget-Me-Not.
Yeah.
And like, okay, that's obvious. Come on. Like,
I mean, the
there's really no
Forget-Me-Not
mystery.
is, if you watch the opening sequence, when
Yes.
it replaces Menma, they put a Forget-Me-Not there in
Yes.
the little lineup. Yeah.
Kind of obvious. But I think there's one where Popo actually puts down like a daisy at at Minma's resting place, and daisies are supposed to be symbolic of rebirth or something
Yeah.
like that, or new birth.
Yeah,
So-
I wouldn't be able to catch all of those things, but I could tell that the author was going for it. I was like, I don't know
Yes.
what that flower means, but I can tell that there's some sort of intention behind it.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And then let's see what else. I mean, in terms of the animation, let's talk about the animation for a second.
Go ahead.
It doesn't have like the bombastic, like wild action sequences of like something
not.
that has a more dynamic stuff, because that's not really what's going for. But given
No,
that,
definitely
it has
not
some really,
Madhouse.
it has right no, and it was really good animation. There was a lot of very good facial expressions and
Yes.
like small like glances of the eyes and like moving around, like small, like a lot of minor motor function moments and like adjusting weight, and all that sounds like well, who am I kidding? I know what crowd I'm talking to here. All that stuff is like really brings a lot of life to characters, and is something that is severely underutilized in anime, because you don't have to do some huge sweeping fanfare in order to like wow people. I can just be like, oh geez, the way that person just blinked and turned their head was really telling of what they're feeling right now.
Yeah, there's an old saying at Disney that an animator is just an actor with a pencil, and that really comes into full form in a series like this, where it very well could. I know there's a live action adaptation of Anohana that I haven't seen.
There's no way that's as good.
No, of course
Maybe.
not. The fact that it is animated just adds to its charm. Honestly. It's one of those things. It could be done in live action, and you may lose something in doing that, and you may gain something else in doing that, but it's just not the same thing. It's not the same thing. So, yeah, the animators really know how to make these human characters feel very natural and grounded in their performances at every single beat. Whether it's mellow, whether it's dramatic, whether it's melodramatic, as I just said, it works at every single beat. It doesn't dazzle, but it works, at the very least. And if you pay attention and if you have a taste for that sort of thing, yes, you can appreciate those little nuances that they do, the little twitch of the hands, the little movement of the eyes, the movement of the head, the way they blink, the way they speak, the way they give little gestures of suggesting what they're thinking every now and again. It's all very, very attention oriented that I really don't see too often outside the likes of, say, Miyazaki-san.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
it's
almost never
definitely
see
a
that
far
outside of
cry
it.
from back when there were severe animation budgets where there were just like really long lines of air quote artistic pausing. Looking at you, Evangelion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, like, yeah, it's like I remember it's like back then it's like there was like a huge. There's been like animation was just so under budgeted that like many shots were just like still shots with mouth flapping or still shots with a slow camera pan.
We still get a lot of that nowadays. So
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Like, they still kind of like utilize that because like, well, if it works, it works.
yeah.
Ain't stupid if it works. That's something I always say, right?
As far as what I have to say, I think I covered just about everything that I wanted to talk about with the series. So
I do really want one day to cosplay Jinta and like have a friend of mine cosplay Menma.
it would be so easy.
It would
You
be
have to find
easy.
like a red
like,
shirt with some kanji on it, throw in some like black pants, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And like basically,
show me your hair a bit.
I would have a backpack full of notes, full of like little like, full of like messages like scribbled on like girly notebook paper, and if anybody recognizes us, have my friend cosplaying as Menma hand one of those to them, and I basically say kind of like, I guess like every one of them would say like you found me or something, and I just watch them cry and I laugh.
Oh, that's terrible.
I think Chris actually had that done to him. That's where I got the idea from. He recognized some Anohana cosplayers, and the Menma came up and gave him a note that said, "You found me."
That's so good. That's so deliciously sadistic. I love it.
You can't help but just curl your fingers and grin menacingly at that.
Or to add some comic relief to that, have a friend of mine cosplay as Menma, while I cosplay as Yukiatsu cosplaying as Menma.
Oh no.
That's horrible. That's horrible. That is absolutely terrible. No, you go to jail for that.
No. That's fantastic. You should totally do that. You be putting one of those highlight videos from.
If you do get it on tape.
So I promise you that I will not shave my body. I will only shave my face for that.
Okay, don't
I'll
get it on
do that
tape.
I'll do that in my full scrawny manliness.
I mean, that's what it would be.
That's almost as bad as me wanting to cosplay as Sho Tucker, and like if I had a daughter, I would either cosplay as Sho Tucker and have like a little white dog plushie with us, or I would cosplay as Lieutenant Hughes from Full Metal Alchemist. I would have like dirt on me.
I hate you and everything you stand for.
Or I would cosplay as Bondrewd, and my daughter would cosplay as Prushka.
Shut up.
Oh.
Although I think my next cosplay would be Nicholas D. Wolfwood from Trigun.
Sure.
Whatever. Okay.
I've never done cosplay, and every time I think about doing it, my mind changes. I do want to do like a double cosplay. Like, I don't know if you guys are familiar. I'm sure you are. League of Legends. There's a character, Kindred, the Lamb and the Wolf. I would love to do that.
What?
So I cosplayed as the first couple times I went to Comic-Con, I cosplayed as Rick Grimes from The Walking Dead season 2.
Okay.
I like the way he looked in season 2 the best.
Okay.
And the first time I went to Anime Expo, my friend and I cosplayed as Taiga and Ryuji from Toradora.
Yep.
Okay, I've cosplayed once. I cosplayed as the merchant from Resident Evil 4.
Oh. So what you buying?
What are you buying? And the funny thing is, I was selling at a booth.
What are you buying?
I was selling at a booth, and I realized every single one of his dialogue worked for the situation. Anytime someone come up, welcome. What
So
are you
good.
buying? And then they leave.
If I was working a booth, I would cosplay as as that traveling merchant from Dark Souls 1.
Okay.
Shimai.
Wait. Oh goodness, you mean Patches?
Not Patches, the one that has like a whole bunch of. He has like the golden helmet. You find him under the bridge. You come to him. He speaks Welsh. He's like, Shimai.
Oh, okay. I guess that works. But one character I've always wanted to cosplay but never got around to it because it would be kind of expensive is the Apprentice from Star Wars: The Force Unleashed.
Oh, yeah.
I've always wanted to cosplay him.
Starkiller.
If we're talking about things that we're not doing just because they're expensive, that's the only reason I haven't done Mega Man yet.
Yeah.
with enough like cosplay foam and stuff like that, it could be done.
Oh, that sounds like a pain in the butt, though, and I have no experience with stuff like that.
It is a pain in the butt, but like it's just kind of like a carving thing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot of work, but it can be done.
Yeah.
I've seen people do some impressive work.
Nicholas D. Wolfwood. All I need to do is just like get that suit, and get that really big cross.
I would also really like to cosplay, and this isn't anime or video game. Well, yes, video games, but would be one of the hunters from Bloodborne. That would be really fun.
Oh
yeah, that's another one that I could easily do. You know, full body clothing is a great equalizer. So yeah. But yeah, I think the hardest part of that would be the hat. The hat is very unique looking.
Yeah,
So,
the tricorn.
Now that's really different. I've seen some cosplayers pull it off. It just doesn't work all the same way. So you gotta cheat with it a little bit. But, yeah,
I mean, I would assume that most people would probably go with the saw blade, and that would probably be a pain in the butt to make too. Especially if you wanted it to be retractable. It's like,
saw cleaver. Yes.
Yes, you are right. It is the saw cleaver. I'm sorry. That is right.
That's not my favorite weapon in the game. I actually prefer the saw spear personally.
More range. Yeah.
Yeah, more range, better attacks. It was my favorite weapon in the game, period. It's the one that I almost never switched out of.
I only played through the game once. I used primarily, what was his name?
If you say
Ludwig's sword. No,
Okay.
Ludwig's that
blade.
thing. Yeah.
Ludwig's
the
blade.
Moonlight Sword.
Not the Moonlight Sword. Ludwig's sword. Yeah, the one that kind of looks like the Moonlight Sword, but it's not.
Although, like,
What was the one
easy
that you
way
were saying that you wouldn't be my friend anymore? What was that?
If you said the Kirk Hammer.
Oh no, I didn't like the Kirk Hammer.
Okay, good.
I was like, an easy way to cosplay is, of course, like finding a character that wears like plain clothes or like school uniform.
Sure.
Then
Yeah.
then that's just a matter of like getting a wig and taking it to a stylist.
Unless you go for like a very specific design, like if you wanted to be Ness, like Ness is just wearing plain clothes, but they're very identifiable as his clothes.
Exactly. They are. That can be a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
Okay,
Like
so-
speaking of although speaking of cosplay, I'm gonna throw this up for next month's nomination again. This one was up this way. Let me bring this up right here. This title. It'd be Sono Bisque-do Wakoi wo Suru.
English
It's-
title.
Basically, it's about this guy that makes Hina dolls, and he meets this sort of like popular like Yaru classmate who he finds out his way into cosplay, and the main character like is able to make clothes for Hina dolls really well, but just has a hard time making the heads. And so he uses the talent that he has for Hina doll clothing and he translates that into various cosplays, and it's really interesting.
Okay. Huh.
And it's also a cute love story.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll be able to find that one out. We did want to get into some of the more newsworthy stuff before we close off here.
Yes. Or before we
Do
go
we
into
want to though?
Ecclesiastes,
That's the real question.
we could just talk. We'll just cover these like two controversial topics. So Ghost of Tsushima, and we'll talk about Uzaki-chan,
Yeah. So,
and then we'll hit up Ecclesiastes.
huh? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
So Ghost of Tsushima, you platinumed this.
Yes,
Yeah.
I got the platinum trophy over the weekend. It's easily my favorite game of the year so far. I don't know.
Nice.
Mortal Shell is coming out in a few weeks, and I may sink my teeth into that one a little bit harder. Maybe not. But Ghost of
We want to talk about
Ghost-
Souls-like games.
exactly.
Or like the controversy around this game. My lord, like
It's really stupid. It's like we got nothing to fight about.
it's like cultural appropriation. It's like
Stupid.
It's like these people can't tell the difference between like an appropriation, which is sort of like a mockery, and appreciation, which is like making a homage.
Uh-huh. Well, the funny thing is, okay, I think when I actually traded this with some of my writing friends, I said that Ghost of Tsushima, it seems like the conception of this game was basically a couple of years ago, some idiot over at Ubisoft managed to spout the nonsensical claim that an Assassin's Creed game that takes place in feudal Japan would not work.
Yeah.
Now, are you stupid? Are you the thing basically writes itself, and it seems like
I'm surprised they're doing Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I was waiting for a long time to do Vikings.
Forget that, man. The thing is, it seems to me like someone at Sucker Punch heard that numbskull spout that nonsense and said, okay, they just went like Thanos and said, fine, I'll do it myself. And what we got instead was Ghost of Tsushima, which, strangely enough, for some reason I was looking up on some of the production notes. Originally, they wanted the game to have like actual historical figures because the game's story takes place at the first Mongol invasion of Japan. So this is the year 1274, and you play as a samurai who's essentially trying to work together to get together a camaraderie of partners to repel the Mongol invasion from Tsushima Island. Now, for those who don't know, Tsushima Island is a real place. It's part of the Japanese archipelago. I think it's the westernmost island on the archipelago. It's quite a while away from where I lived. I used to live in Japan, but I lived in northern Honshu, close to Hokkaido. I actually might have lived in Hokkaido, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it's a while away from Tsushima. But that's where the story takes place, and it is made by an American company, Sucker Punch. They're the same people who gave us titles like Infamous and Sly Cooper back in the day. And this is, I don't know, you could say that this is like similar to the development and maturity that Naughty Dog went through. You know, Naughty Dog earlier on had titles like Crash Bandicoot and Jak and Daxter, and then they did something more teen rated with Uncharted, and then they went full mature rated and ended a generation with The Last of Us.
The Last of Us, yeah.
Yeah, Sucker Punch seemed to have a similar development. First, they started off with Sly Cooper, which was just another mascot character on the PlayStation alongside Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank. Then they did something more teen-rated with Infamous, which my brother likes a lot more than I do. He absolutely loves those games. And now they've gone full mature title and ended a generation. I think this could honestly qualify as a good swan song for the PlayStation 4 and Ghost of Tsushima. And in this respect, it does feel honestly a lot like the basic structure of an old Assassin's Creed game. There is very effective stealth mechanics in the game. There's a lot of ways in which you can, if you want to go the samurai route and just take everyone head on and fight them openly, you can do that. If you want to take the more stealth route, you can do that as well. And the game enables you to do both ways. And of course, there are encampments and forts to overtake and liberate areas, of course. And there are various plots and subplots and quests and sub-quests to pursue, each with their own various levels of development and character intrigue going on there. Shoot, there are even lighthouses you have to light, and various question marks and items that you have to collect in order to get the full accomplishments of the game. So it does, in a lot of respects, feel like an Assassin's Creed, the kind of Assassin's Creed game that I wish Assassin's Creed would be again. Because after Origins, after Assassin's Creed Origins, I honestly think that the Assassin's Creed series lost its soul.
Brotherhood was really awesome.
I love Brotherhood. My favorite in the series is still Black Flag.
Same.
I know people say that's not a legitimate. It's a great pirate game, but a so-so Assassin's Creed game. I disagree. I think it's both a great pirate game and the best Assassin's Creed game. Period. I love the first game. I love the second game. Brotherhood is great, but Black Flag is easily my favorite of the series, and everything after that was either mediocre or completely forgettable or just plain frustrating. Like, I don't understand why people liked Assassin's Creed Odyssey so much, but that game turned out to be more frustrating than fun for me. Especially since it was basically just trying to be The Witcher 3, but with Dark Souls combat.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot contribute to this. I only played the first two.
The first two Assassin's Creeds?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Ezio or Altair?
Well, Ezio.
Oh,
Altair didn't really have much personality. He was cool, and that was about it.
Yeah. And he couldn't swim.
Yeah. Another news. There's been a recent release for an anime. I've followed the manga for a while, and it's really fun. I kind of what initially drew me into it was that it took place at a college instead of a high school. It's Uzaki-chan wants to hang out, and when this released, even before this released, people were just really peeved about the character Uzaki-chan herself, for no other reason than because she is short-stacked.
Meaning?
She is short and thick.
Uh-huh. Yes, she is abnormally short, even for an Asian woman, she's abnormally short. But she's full-bodied, to put it politely, in every way that a woman of her age can be full-bodied.
And that is the only complaint that they have.
That tracks. That doesn't seem too surprising to me.
It's like,
no.
And this has happened before with the same character when Red Cross in Japan used her image as an advertisement to donate blood.
Mm-hmm. I don't understand what she
Twitter
has to do with blood
Puritans were
donation.
up in arms. I don't know.
Can anybody?
Anything works in advertisement.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Every time I go to buy like Dole brand salad,
what does a clown have to do with burgers?
What?
Ronald McDonald. What does a clown have to do with burgers?
I don't know. I guess so.
I guess.
So they just chose this random rom-com waifu as their mascot.
Kids like clowns.
Right.
Or at least they did. Not anymore.
You'd be hard pressed to find a kid that likes clowns.
Nowadays, maybe.
Yeah, today.
especially since like
In a post Stephen King universe.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't really want to get into talking about it because that's a whole nother conversation in its own right.
Yeah, but like Uzaki-chan, like it's a really great anime. Basically, there's this guy in his second year in college who is constantly being harassed by his kohai, his underclassman, Uzaki-chan, and like he is like the main character just wants to be left alone. He's very much just like the very hard recluse introvert, just wants to take care of business and get on with his day. And Uzaki-chan just comes in and is like, "Hey, what are you been around sitting around for, being all boring? Let's go do something." And then shenanigans ensues.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Her character honestly reminds me a lot of Nagatoro.
Like,
way.
she is definitely part of the bully triad.
Yeah, it seems so. Though she's not nearly as relentless a bully as Nagatoro is.
She does oftentimes unintentionally get the main character flustered, like what was her name? Suzaki-chan.
Okay.
Is that it? Yeah.
I have no idea. I haven't gone through the series.
No, neither have I. I just started reading the first chapter like Tuesday.
It's a grand old time, and like it's like despite like the character design, there is so very few ecchi moments,
Really?
which is rather refreshing. It's like it's like the only time that it's there, it's like when this is blatantly the center of this one joke, and then they do the joke and then they move on.
Okay. Yeah, the anime like just premiered last month. I just realized. Okay. You know, the manga's been around since 2017, but the anime production just came out last month.
Yeah.
So it's slated for
It's
12
like
episodes.
and with that coming out, and with Nagatoro being greenlit for an adaptation,
Has it?
yeah,
Oh, sweet.
and golly goodness, I am still waiting for KyoAni to pick up Komi-san.
Komi-san, of course. They're gonna have
It's
to
like,
do it eventually.
It has to be KyoAni.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true. That'd be awesome if it was, but I don't know if that's happening.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know where KyoAni is in their recovery period.
Well,
Right
they
now.
do have other.
They recently
studios.
they recently put out their request for, because I know they always turn one light novel into an anime. It's like a annual or semi-annual thing that they do, and they recently put out that competition for those light novels to start coming in.
That's cool.
Well, that's nice enough. I was looking back. I don't think we went far enough into the Ghost of Tsushima controversy as I would like to. I forgot that there was this
Mostly talking
clamor
about
of-
its phrases because the controversy is so stupid.
Yeah, well, the thing is, there's this clamor of K-pop fans. First of all, K-pop fans.
What does
saying-
K-pop have to do with Japan?
I don't know, but they were saying that Sucker Punch is racist for making a game about Japanese culture. Despite the fact that, you know, the entire cast in both English and Japanese, they're all Asian at the very least. They may not be per se Japanese, but they're all Asian. And they actually modeled the characters' models after the actors who play them. So when you look at the characters in the game, the ones that are named at least, they're modeled after the actors who play them. So the main character is a young samurai named Sakai Jin. And he's played by Daisuke Tsuji, who's a pretty popular name for what I understand. He's actually running a Twitch campaign right now where he plays the game himself. He's playing through the game right now himself and, being a fanboy for all of the accomplishments that they were able to pull off in that game. But they're having a blast with it. Japan as a nation is loving the game. Ghost of Tsushima has been very well received.
Despite the best efforts of like the Twitter Puritans in the West, like Ghost of Tsushima has become the next. Basically become the next Alita Battle Angel, where like Alita Battle Angel overshadowed Captain America. Ghost of Tsushima is overshadowing Last of Us 2.
I used Ghost Well, the thing is, I used the last Ghost of Tsushima specifically to wipe out the aftertaste of The Last of Us 2 out of my mouth. Because, oh god, that game, ooh. That is easily the most frustrating game experience I have ever had, and I thoroughly regret my purchase on that one.
Really?
But, oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and that's a talk for another time. But yeah, The Last of Us Part 2, I would not wish that game on my worst enemy. It is so, so unnervingly frustrating. So many bad decisions, both from the characters and from the writers, that really contributed to that. But Ghost of Tsushima, perfect follow up.
Yeah. So yeah, it's basically just kind of sort of like it's another story of like, hey, genuine art winning out against like people that are pushing some sort of like pushing some sort of like agenda. I swear, every time I hear the words inclusivity and diversity, I just immediately think of a bunch, like, I just immediately, it's like my mind just goes to like a whole bunch of bull hunts that's probably attached to it.
Yeah. So that's what we got to talk about in the news right now. So are we going to go over to our Bible selections real quick? We got about half an hour before we need to start closing up shop.
Yeah, we can go through a few verses of. So we ended chapter 3 last month, so we're at the beginning of chapter 4.
Okay.
So, with the most abrupt segue into this, chapter 4. Then I returned and considered all the oppression that is done under the sun, and look.
Are we using any particular version?
I use a New King James Version.
Yeah, that's my selected version usually too.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure we were harmonized on that.
Yeah. So, and look, the tears of the oppressed, but they have no comforter. On the side of their oppressors there is power, but they have no comforter. Therefore I praise the dead who were already dead, more than the living who are still alive. Yet better than both is he who has never existed, who has not seen the evil work that is done under the sun. We can unpack that for a little bit. It's like this. I love how the Bible is sort of like so archetypal that like it can just so very easily apply to like whatever is happening, like in the sociocultural environment, or just like personally within people's lives. I just love how that can be applied. Like, and of course, like very much on the surface, talking about like oppressor and oppressed.
Yeah.
And yet
dichotomy.
Yeah, and yet at the end of that, it's basically kind of saying that like it's like, hey, at least that's better than not existing at all.
That's the thought.
Yeah. It's like the tears. He's like, on the side of the oppressors there's power, but like the tears of the oppressed have no comforter.
Yeah.
Therefore, praise the dead that are already dead. And it's like, yeah, it's just kind of like, yeah, it's just you already kind of like you gone through it. Your time of hardship's up. Now you're dead.
Yeah. That's a thought.
And, it's like, yet even better is he, or yeah, actually, wait. Actually, I got that third verse wrong. He doesn't say that it's better than not existing. He says like, it is better than both. Yet better than both is he who has never existed, who has not seen the evil work that's done under the sun. And it's like, yeah, I guess like with that, just kind of like there's one of the things that I came to a conclusion where like if we had a choice, if we somehow had a choice whether or not to exist, the majority, if not every single one of us, would never choose to exist.
Yeah, probably. I think that's a big reason why. I think that's a big reason why babies cry when they leave the womb.
Yeah, it's like it's very much like an essential part that we are thrown into existence.
Yes, against our will. We have no choice.
Yeah, it's like it's very essential because like we wouldn't. If we wouldn't, it's like we would see all the hardship and just like be like it's for, like these little punctuations of happiness with this much suffering. Nah, man.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Some may be mature enough to recognize, you know what, it could still be worth it.
Yeah, but that maturity comes with that experience of suffering.
Of course.
And moving on to vanity of selfish toil. Again, I saw that for all toil and every skillful work, a man is envied by his neighbor. This also is vanity and grasping for the wind. The fool folds his hands and consumes his own flesh. Better a handful with quietness than with both hands full together with toil and grasping for the wind. Then I returned and saw vanity under the sun. There is one alone, without companion. He is neither son nor brother, yet there is no end to all his labors. Nor is his eye satisfied with riches, but he never asks, for whom do I toil and deprive myself of good? This is also vanity and a grave misfortune. And I guess like that first part right there, like talking about envy. So, I remember like one person. I remember like hearing like one person put it like really well. It's like envy is disgruntled appreciation.
Yes.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I don't think it's a negative trait to appreciate something.
No.
It's when it gets out of hand and it consumes a part of you that it shouldn't.
It's when you're prideful enough to think that like you're more worthy than somebody else to have gotten that which is appreciative or appreciable.
Well, one thing I learned from reading history is that envy can be a positive motivator if it is handled and conceptualized properly. There have been many instances in history in which whole groups of people have become envious of others in such a way that it spurred them on to improve what economists call their human capital in order to improve the standard of wealth and living in their own nation. Scotland was like that in the 18th century.
I'd say
Japan
that's
was like
more
that in the 19th
inspiration than
century.
envy, though.
You want to call it inspiration instead?
Yeah, is that the way I see like envy is basically sort of like where inspiration kind of like it gets that like gets like spurred on and whatnot. Envy kind of like takes that, but rather like sees it as a zero sum game.
Okay. Yeah.
Or like the only way that I can gain is if that person loses.
Right.
Whereas someone that's inspired is like takes that as like that's pretty great. Let's see if I can do that.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Sure. But yes, but that I guess you could say that sensation of coming across someone who has something that you don't, whether it be a position or a skill or a piece of wealth or something like that, and responding with "I want that too." There's ways to go about that are healthy and pathological. You know, so one is good and actually constructs and builds up the state ensure of the human dignity, and another one detracts from it.
The fool folds his hands and consumes his own flesh. It's like, yeah, that kind of puts it there. And then like after that is basically like the person who just works for working's sake, rather than
And they pity themselves over it too. It's like, oh, what's the point of this? Like,
Right.
like this
Rather-
isn't turning out for me as well as I was hoping for. Basically,
you can probably look to most like salary slaves and wage slaves for that.
You could.
Is it or just like people that like yeah, you kind of the story is just like, oh, I had such aspirations in high school, but now I'm just a pencil pusher.
Yeah.
Go lay down.
That's hard.
Or like it is hard, but like even then it's like even if it's a job that you don't want, you can still take pride in your work. Like, it's like, and if you at least do that, if you at least try to do a good job, even if you don't like the job, at least try. Like it does turn out better, and you actually do a good job.
Well, that's kind of what I find myself having to tell myself oftentimes, because I am kind of in that position where I make good money and I work a job that is not very personally fulfilling, but it definitely keeps the lights on and gives me everything that I want materialistically speaking, and even more than that. And one of the things that I keep telling myself to keep my spirits up is the fact that it's unusual for me to be in this position. Now, most people, when I look at even people older than me and how they're still working in retail or working as stock personnel and
Yep.
working minimum wage jobs of some sort, even though they also have degrees of various sorts and all other kinds of hangups, I have to keep telling myself that I'm immensely blessed to be, before the time I turn 30, I'm a homeowner. You know how many other people in my age bracket who could say that? I could probably count them on one hand. It's very, very unusual now for people in our age bracket to do the kinds of things that were just expected as normative in older generations. But, debt and inflation and various other market forces made that incredibly prohibitive in a variety of ways. So I have to keep reminding myself, hey, it could be so, so, so much worse. You just got to make better of your situation than what you are now, and that's what I'm trying to do.
And also, kind of like the end of this part, it's like, for whom do I toil and deprive myself of good? This is also vanity and a grave misfortune. It's like the word sin comes from a Greek term in archery, meaning like to miss the mark.
Right.
And so, if you kind of think of if you can kind of think of like faith and sin in terms of archery, you can think of so you can think of like faith as sort of like an ideal. It's a target, right? And it's like you point to like Jesus or like God or the Trinity as the target itself. Now, it's like when you adopt a target, you adopt an ideal. Your ideal is to hit that bullseye.
Yes.
And when you adopt an ideal, you invariably adopt a judge. It's like every time you pull back and let an arrow fly, you are judged by how well you shot the arrow by whether or not you hit the target or how close to the target you get. And so like adopting the highest and ultimate ideal, God, you invariably adopt the ultimate judge, which is why divine judgment is inescapable. And so with that, you can kind of take a look at the dynamic between faith and works. And sort of like a lot of people that, I guess like a lot of Reformed theologians, starting with Luther, kind of like disregards the book of James, that actually sort of like puts the importance of works forward.
I was like, that is upsetting because James is one of my favorites.
Yes.
And so here's the dynamic that I found between faith and works. So if you have faith with no works, like faith is an aim. Faith is an aim towards the target. So if you have faith with no works, you're just staring at a target, but never pulling back an arrow and shooting. And if you have all works but no faith, much like those couple verses in Ecclesiastes, all you're doing is just firing arrows willy-nilly and putting a lot of effort into it, but you're not really aiming at anything. It's like, in fact, you can put someone's eye out with that, even with the best intentions.
Yep.
But like, it's only when faith is combined with works, when the faith is internal and embodied, you're aiming at the target, you take the effort, you pull back against the bowstring, you carefully aim, you have your posture, you train your posture, you train your form, you practice, you let it fly, and then you see where it goes. And of course, you're not going to hit the target all the time. And as you get a better perception of the target, you'll see that it's actually kind of like, maybe it wasn't where it was, but every time you chase this target, it's an upward trend.
Yeah. You get better at it with time.
And of course, like we won't, like, nobody can reach the ultimate at this side, but like it's that effort put in. It's like basically like the cross is our target. We're aiming at that, and we embody that by trying to live Christ-like. And that's us living Christ-like is pulling back on the bow and shooting the arrow, seeing where it lands, adjusting ourselves, going back to our manuals and textbooks, the Bible. It's like drawing back on that bow and seeing where it lands. That's basically like applied, like where we try to like apply um, the doctrine that we learn and see what kind of experiences that we get from that, and then take that experience, bring it back to scripture, and then we take the scripture onto real life, and then we gain experience, and it goes into that cycle, and that creates an upward trend of us chasing this target.
All right. I remember my online Bible study actually dedicated a whole semester, you could call it, to the book of James. And the takeaway, if we could summarize our entire takeaway of the book of James in one sentence, it would be our salvation is rooted in faith, not in works, but our faith should be one that works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the way that we put it.
It
should be something that actually manifests into action, because otherwise, it's all talk, and talk is cheap.
Yeah, it's like faith-based works rather than when people. So I see quite a lot of people that think is like, oh, you bring works into faith, it automatically becomes work-based faith. It's like, no.
No.
It's not
No.
work. It's not work-based faith. It's faith-based works.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's not the works that save us, it's the faith that saves us. But our faith is manifested in our works.
Yeah, it's like, and if your faith doesn't really do anything, can you really count it as a faith at all? If it doesn't, if your faith doesn't move you,
Right. Motivate.
it's like
in
it's
terms of
like
action.
faith should move you. It's alive and it makes you alive. If it doesn't move you, that faith is dead.
Yeah, I actually like the way C.S. Lewis put it in one context. He said, "Arguing between what's more important, faith or works, is like arguing between which blade in a pair of scissors is more important. It's like they work together.
Yeah.
One actually does the salvation, but the other one actually motivates us in the place where we are showing what we truly believe. A very common wise saying is, if you want to know what someone really believes, don't listen to what they say. Pay attention to what they do.
What they do. Yep. Yeah.
Your actions show your genuine beliefs a lot more vividly than anything you say or confess does.
And that's
Although,
not just like restricted to beliefs in religion either. That's just your beliefs
No.
about the world. In, like,
generally
as a whole.
speaking. Generally speaking. Whatever your stance or position is on anything, it will show in what you do a lot better than it will show in what you say, or in what you tweet, or in what kind of Facebook status you have to. Okay, I'm done.
Although, like, Kierkegaard does give a warning with that too, because it is possible that one can go through the motions of being a Christian without ever really being a Christian. It's like there is something to be wary of that too. It is more easily applied to movements with large people, because like not every individual will have the full grasp of the ideology of that group, but if you watch the group as a whole and what it's doing, then you can pretty much assess what their motivation is. But with an individual, they're more complex.
Yes.
And like it is possible for people to like betray others, like your actions may say loyalty, but like at the next moment, or your intentions will be to backstab them, and that's also why betrayal is the lowest pit of hell in Dante's Inferno. Because in order to betray, you first have to be loyal. And you have to take that action speaks louder than words, and take advantage of that.
Yes. You have to act in a way that earns someone's faith or trust,
and
then turn it on its head, basically snap its neck.
So and Kierkegaard does. That's sort of like where the warning of Kierkegaard is, like, even those that on the surface may act like as a normal Christian or a air quote good Christian would be, they may not have even been a Christian. They may not even be a Christian at all. They're just
going through the motions.
Going through the motions.
And that's sad. That's really sad.
Although, like, sort of on the flip side, a little bit of hope with that, there are subconscious tics and micro expressions that even betray the most treacherous of actions, unless you're pathological liar or just really really conscious of yourself in um, like every single like muscle twitch that happens with you.
Uh huh. There's oftentimes I'm trying to remember some of these quotes, but there are a couple of quotes from Jesus that I can never ever read them without becoming self-conscious. One of them I know is, "If you love me, you'll obey my teachings."
Mm-hmm.
And who can honestly say that they obey Christ's teachings 100% or all the time, or even most of the time? Very, very few.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's another one that I really just cannot bring up to mind, but it's those kinds of things. The fact that it makes me self-conscious, it can or cannot be healthy depending on how I respond to it. It can um, be unhealthy in a way that it makes me question whether or not I'm truly saved, which is kind of heretical. But at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, it can be healthy in that it spurs me to try to live out my faith more honestly, it could be said.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could always do
Interesting,
that better.
interesting thing too about like where like a very convicting passage would make someone like question their own faith. It's like also remember Kierkegaard touching upon that notion. He calls it the madness of repentance.
Hmm.
And the best
Okay.
way that I can
That's
illustrate
good. I like
the
that.
the best way I can illustrate that is, let's say that you saved somebody, or actually no, let's say that somebody has wronged you, and
Okay.
they came clean about it and never stopped apologizing.
Hmm.
That's what the madness of repentance is like.
Uh-huh.
They ask for forgiveness, but they never accept their own forgiveness.
Huh. Hmm. Okay.
And in a way, for at least some of them, maybe not for all, but it ends up circling back to being just another version of selfishness because it becomes about them. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
it's like I don't know if I can accept this gift that has been given to me. And then they just keep going through that circle over and over rather than just accepting it and becoming better through it.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I see
Yeah,
that. I see that.
it's like very much a good commentary against self-flagellation.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole purpose of accepting that forgiveness is so that you don't have to flagellate.
Yeah, it's like
Your
Jesus
debt
already
has
took
been
the 40
paid.
lashes with the cat of nine tails.
Yes, exactly. Like
It's like put put
that debt's been paid.
it's like put the whip down.
I did
It's
that
like,
just so you didn't have to do that.
mm-hmm. It's like it also kind of goes. It's like something like that too. Also kind of goes into this illustration that came into my head quite a while ago, and it ties into basically how the blood of Jesus and the baptism are linked.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
you think of it this way. Think of like Jesus is on the cross. And when we sin, that blood is on our hands.
Okay.
Is that and that blood dirties us because it's us that put him on the cross.
Uh huh.
Like he wouldn't be on the cross if there were no
Right.
sins. So it's our sins
Right.
that put him up on the cross. That blood is on our hands,
Right.
and it dirties us.
Uh huh.
And that could also be like a partial explanation as to why there are people that are like even resentful of Christianity because it puts the blame on them
Uh huh.
for um, for their for their own like hardship and stuff like that, or why things are going wrong. And basically it's like driving a knife into somebody and then blaming them for getting your shirt stained. But
Well, I kind of like the succinct way that C.S. Lewis put it. Like, the reason why we need forgiveness is precisely because we're without excuse.
mhm,
And you oftentimes find that a lot of people, even Christians, do this, and I've even been guilty of this every now and again, that when I sit down to pray and ask for forgiveness, I realize quickly that what I'm really asking for is to be excused. And what that means
yeah,
is that you're trying to be seen as though you're not really guilty for what you did. That's what an excuse means. If you're
you're
excused, you're not truly guilty. It wasn't really your fault, or circumstances basically rid you of any culpability for your actions. That's an excuse. A
yeah,
forgiveness recognizes you are truly culpable for what you did, but I am removing that guilt from you out of grace.
Yeah, it's the difference between repenting of your sin and repenting of your punishment. Uh, and and so with baptism, it's a highly symbolic death and rebirth sort of ritual. And so, like, water is highly tied to chaos and death, and so in the baptism, you willingly accept this death. You dunked in the water. You willingly accept this death, and by accepting it, you transcend it, and that's what rebirths you, and you come back up as if it's like you die to yourself, and then you come back up cleaned by what has killed you, and that's like by accepting Jesus, the blood on your hands, what once dirtied you, by accepting it has now cleansed you.
That's one way to put it. I like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
Yeah, it's like that's a whole lot of that's really like a whole lot of that's a concept that's like sort of like touched upon and alluded to in scripture that like people don't seem to really talk a lot about. It's like people just talk about like how like the blood of Christ cleanses, but they don't talk about what happens before that. It's like, yes, the blood of Christ has dirtied you, that blood is on your hands, but by accepting it, you have transcended it. By accepting death, you transcend it. Oh, death, where is thy victory? Oh, death, where is thy sting?
That's one thing that's the primary verse that my pastor has been using in his last few sermons.
And it's by accepting that allows you to beat it. It's like you think of like Azrael, like you think of like the angel of death. Like for a long time, I've thought of him as one of my best friends. Like of course he's been with me since the beginning. As soon as you're born, you're old enough to die. He hangs around me like a shadow.
Yep.
He puts a fire under my butt to keep doing stuff because like, hey, you got stuff to do and I'm coming.
Yep.
And where that victory is taken away is you don't see him as an adversary, you see him as a friend and a rival. So with that, by befriending death, you take away his victory. And by befriending them, you take away the resentment, you take away his sting. To which he doesn't come at you stinging, he comes at you with a caress.
Yeah, you can honestly say that about a relationship with nature in general. I'm remembering another article by C.S. Lewis in which he says something to the effect of, if we look at Mother Nature as a mother, she is cruel, she is relentless, she is oppressive, and she's insurmountable. But if we look to nature, the natural world, as a sister, rather than as a mother, she's a lot easier to live with, and even to contend with, and even to come to terms with. And you find that throughout history, the nations that have made the greatest advances in our stance with nature are those who manage to conquer it as just another creation, rather than the thing from which we all spawn and to which we all return once all is said and done. And it's really incredible. It's greatly motivating to see the thing that seems so oppressive and insurmountable in that kind of redeeming term.
Yeah, it's like we're pretty cruel. We're pretty like cruel to her, to nature, but like she's pretty cruel right back.
Yes.
So
you want to make peace with that. If you know what's good for you, you definitely want to make peace with that.
Earth
you want
Chan,
to be constantly at war. You want to constantly be at war with Earth Chan, or do you want to make peace with her?
Earth Chan deserves all the head pats.
Okay, fine. Gotta be a weeb about it.
So I honestly really love the conception of Earth Chan. just like personifying like concepts and things and places really does kind of like put some things into perspective.
Black Hole Chan is even more entertaining for me.
I like the familial relationship between Earth Chan and Luna Chan.
I haven't seen Luna Chan.
She sacrifices so much for Earth Chan.
Okay.
I also totally ship Earth Chan and Solar
Kun.
Chan. Sun Kun.
Okay. You do that.
He's too hot, but she needs him.
That's
She can't get too close. She can't get too close.
Many a doomed romance.
Yeah.
But you can't,
Almost
you
like
can't
that.
Get too far away either.
Almost like that. Have you ever seen this sort of like comic series? Basically between like the Sun and Icarus, where like the Icarus is basically looks like he's like made of wax, like a candle, and he's in this sort of like complicated relationship with the Sun, who's like personified as like a very like attractive woman. Like it's really good. I should link this to you. It's a really interesting story. It started out with just some like sketches and like illustrations and stuff like that, and it developed into this really like complicated story. And there's like I believe that there might be like a book about that like coming out soon.
Nah, I'm not familiar.
The guy that does it does a lot of Teen Titans fan art too. You might have seen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I might have. I've seen more than my fair share of Teen Titans art, so yeah, maybe I have seen his work. Just wouldn't recognize it.
He does a lot of the ones where like the Titans are like in street clothes and stuff like that.
Oh, Picardo?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
You should look up his like Icarus and the Sun series. That's a really good one.
Okay. Yeah, he blew up with his Teen Titans art. I know him.
Oh yeah. I've followed him like early on back in my DeviantArt days.
Yes.
I cannot go back to DeviantArt.
Nah.
Dude, it's all about Pixiv now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pixiv.
Yeah.
Pixiv and just
you just-
Instagram.
Yeah. I mean, if you want like an endless stream of really great anime art, Pixiv is where it's at.
Or like even Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter to an extent, because a lot of them have Twitter accounts.
I don't have Twitter, but I imagine that most of it's probably posted to Instagram as well, since that's kind of what that was built for.
I only have a Twitter pseudonymously.
Now, it is kind of strange. A lot of the anime artists that I follow on Pixiv and Twitter do not have Instagram accounts.
Really?
No. I can never find them on Instagram. Some do, but most do not.
Yeah.
It's a bit strange.
I guess okay, so for next month's conversation, I think we should delve into VTubers.
Yes, that is a conversation that's we've been needing to have for some time.
It's like I've recently gotten to HoloLive and I cannot stop. I've even started like following Iron Mouse, who's just absolutely adorable. And of all people, too, like Project Melody, I like her safe for work content. She's actually quite the character. Does a lot of collabs with like Lost Paws and Nuxtaku.
Yes, she does.
And she is a cinnamon roll.
Okay.
Despite her, I don't know if it's primary anymore, but her initial streaming platform.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. Even her fandom, which is referred to as the Science Team, is actually like I would say relatively or marginally wholesome. Because like last month was her birthday, and she was doing a stream on her birthday, and within like the first 2 minutes, she got like a 16K in donations. I don't know if that's simping or genuine fandom or both.
Both. That's definitely both.
Both. But like she actually broke down in like tears of joy over that. Like she was like, that's is that I don't know. It's like I can see Melody like developing her career beyond the not safe for work like streaming stuff. I see her doing a lot of good things. She did create quite an uproar on that platform. Um, I'm intentionally not saying the platform for reasons. It's like
Oh,
she created quite a tizzy on that initial platform because like all the like the people that are like really out in front of a camera were like getting upset. It's just like, oh, why is this like fake girl like on the front page of this platform? And it's like, oh, the future is now, boomer.
I see.
But yeah, check out her collabs on Nux Taku and Lost Pause. She's
Yeah,
great.
I keep saying that around. Maybe I'll give it a shot. But I was thinking about all the. What's that stupid one that looks like a dog? Inu, what's her name?
Uh,
Uh,
Korone.
Inu, yeah, Korone.
I love
Yeah, she's the
Korone. I
one that.
love, I love, I love her Doom playthrough.
Yeah, she has been playing a lot of Doom, hasn't she? So
Oh,
yeah,
just the innocent, like screams of laughter amidst the slaughter of demons.
hmm she kind of creeps me out. But yeah, we'll get into all that next month, definitely.
Yeah,
VTubers, that's the thing. And we, of course, I. What's her
there are some
name?
like English VTubers up on the rise, like Melody, Iron
I
Mouse.
Kizuni. I
Yeah,
Kizuni. We're gonna have to get into her.
like
We're gonna have to
yeah,
talk all
Kizuna
about her.
I.
hmm
Kizuna I. There you go. Yeah.
yeah. And
Well,
there's uh yeah, I'm gonna have to do some research on a whole bunch of other ones. It's like the Japanese ones are a little bit hard to get into, especially when they stream. They don't have subtitles. Um, it's a lot easier to get like subtitled clips of them on YouTube. But there are some English VTuber streamers out there. Like one of my friends recently made me aware of a cute Scottish one.
uh huh.
What was her name? Um, Comfy Rana. Comfy Rana. Adorkable Scottish cinnamon roll VTuber.
Okay. Well, we'll look into all of that for next month.
Yep.
That'll be a fun
Next
time.
month is VTubers.
Yay. Cooper, thanks for joining us. This was really enjoyable. We're always happy to have another member of the group join us on these podcasts. We hope to do that more often in the future.
Yeah,
Mhm.
thanks guys. I appreciate it. It was fun. This was my first time ever doing a podcast, so it was a nice little experience.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
a
Hopefully
lot of
this
it
will
is just
be.
shooting the breeze.
It
Yeah.
is. It can be. I'm trying to get like those trash talk anime guys. That's what I want to get like.
Oh
But
man,
that'll.
that's gonna be difficult.
We
Yeah.
need to get Fritz up in here.
Not in terms of popularity, but in terms of candor, really.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Because they already, all those guys already had large pre-existing fan bases, so that's not really fair. But I'm talking
Yeah.
about like the way they handle their show. That's what I would like to be able to do effortlessly.
I think that's a worthy goal.
Yes, sir. All right, so we got our assignments. I guess we're not going to be talking about a particular series for next month, though.
Yeah, not a particular series, it's just kind of like a general VTuber talk. A little bit of history, of course, like starting with Kizuna Ai.
Mm-hmm.
Because like she's the
Just
one
like
that really
remember.
spearheaded the whole thing.
Yes, but I
Um,
know there are ones that are older than that. But we'll look
yeah,
into those.
yeah, and of course like Hollow Live, which is really taking the internet by storm. They just released they just unveiled like their fifth generation of VTubers. It's basically a VTuber idol group.
All
And
right,
then we'll
then.
also give some highlights to some English speaking VTubers so that like we all can enjoy some of that.
Well, that'll be fun to research. That'll be fun to look into because I only see it like sporadically when they creep into my DMs and show up in my recommended videos for
There's
some
the
indiscriminable reason.
the Hollow Live itself is a whole lot of memes. There's a
All right.
whole lot. Like Rushia the cutting board. Oh, don't that ticks her off.
All right.
She actually kind of like went off on overseas Western um, fans in the chat room, calling her a cutting board. Oh my gosh, you got to see that clip.
Oh, which VTuber is this?
Rushia,
Oh no, that's one I
yeah,
don't even know.
little onion-headed necromancer.
Okay, this is going to be a journey.
Oh yeah, there's at least like 24, now 28 members of Hololive.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
Well, until then, you guys, please, everyone out there, take care of yourselves. We will see you around the net. We will see you on the group. We will keep on reading and watching and weaving to our heart's content. In the meantime, everyone, take care of yourselves in the middle of this pandemic. It's rough, but hopefully things will get better if our idiot leaders can get their heads from out of their backsides.
We need to do what
before-
New Zealand did.
Yeah, what did they do again?
They just based everything on straight facts.
Yeah, like Sweden, you mean?
Kinda, yeah. Although New
Okay.
Zealand was like just completely eradicated it almost virtually.
Yes, same thing with Sweden and Finland and
Mm-hmm.
Denmark. But yeah, we're not going to get into that. Y'all take care of yourselves. I'm signing off this broadcast now. 3, 2, 1.